Stuff. No longer separated by cosmic cabinets, Brandon and Logan are broadcasting Nintendo Stuff live using their telepathic powers. My name is Brandon Miracle. We're here in the Break Room Arcade with episode 55 of Nintendo Stuff. How you doing, Logan?
Yeah, I'm all right. I mean, today's been a day.
Yeah.
You know, but this is a momentous occasion for two reasons. One, this is the only episode that will be 45 episodes behind our 100th episode of Nintendo Stuff.
You're right.
And two, I think this might be like one of the most well-prepared podcasts that I have done like pre-work for, you know?
And why would you say that is?
Because we had a brainstorming session last night to figure out some ideas, and partially because, well, it's been a light news week.
Yes, that was kind of the inciting incident of all the work we did.
Yeah, so I was like, well, if we're gonna make this, you know, somewhat interesting, and hopefully, you know, in the long run, more unique, and really offer more value to our dedicated listeners on both podcasting sources and on the YouTube channel, we gotta, you know, do some work. And, you know, now that we are living in the same place, it's a lot easier to make those things happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've even done a little bit of preparation myself, just in a different way. Like, the two of us together really made a lot of things happen for this specific episode, and will ultimately affect all the episodes going forward. We got some new segments that we've come up with that we think you guys will enjoy. You already know about one of them, because earlier today we actually posted a tweet asking you guys some of the questions that you wanted to ask. We'll actually answer some of those towards the end of the show, so if you want your question answered, make sure you're tuned in and you stick with us. Other than that, we do have one other special new segment for today's episode that we'll get to right after today's news. So what's first on the docket?
Well, actually, that's a really good question. Let me scroll down here after all of my writing. First, we have a Kawashima's Brain Training for Nintendo Switch is coming this January. Initially, I was like, wait, is this just Brain Age? It's not Brain Age. But I appreciate any brain training game. I remember playing
Dr. Kawashima's games were on DS as well.
Yes, yeah.
The last one being Dr. Kawashima's Devilish Training, I think, for Nintendo 3DS.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this and Brain Age are two separate things.
Yeah, I remember playing Brain Age, and then also I remember playing Big Brain Academy.
Yes.
On the DS as well. That was the one I played a lot.
Oh, that's what I meant when I said they were different. It's Big Brain Academy and Brain Training that are different. Brain Age is a part of Brain Training, isn't it?
I thought this was separate.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Well, you know, it's been a long time. The DS came out in 2004. It is 2019, almost 2020. I'm 25 years old. I have diabetes. My memory's not great.
I was just talking about how well prepared I was for this podcast, and then I'm just blowing it already.
Right out of the gate. But that said, yeah, I think this is a great game to have on Switch, especially considering that Switch is appealing to a lot of people, a lot of non-gamers, quite in the same way that the Wii did, but from a different angle. Rather than, you know, attracting non-gamers with a strange gimmick, they're attracting non-gamers with AAA games in a portable form factor for a cheaper price. So having something like Dr. Kawashima's Brain Training available on there, I think is great for older folks, just for people who are looking to exercise their minds. And it utilizes some of the Switch's quirkier features, like the touchscreen, which doesn't show up in a whole lot of video games.
Yeah, it even says here that the packaged version comes with a stylus, which
why didn't Mario Maker?
Oh yeah, but I'm glad that they're actually putting out official styluses for the Switch.
Absolutely.
Especially like if I can just hold that thing sideways, you know, kind of like how I'm holding my phone right now, or most people hold their phones, and then be able to actually, you know, draw out letters and numbers and things like that. I am looking forward. I always like kind of these smaller experiences, especially something that makes me feel like I'm smart.
Yes.
You know.
Like the Ace Attorney games always did that for me.
Yeah.
Even though some of the stretches you have to make aren't exactly logical, but
Yeah.
same difference.
So there's a few different things in this game that I think are great and actually make me even more interested in this. There's finger calculations. Solves math problems using your fingers. Even if you know the answer in your head, you'll need to react quickly. There's also one of my favorite types of logic puzzles, which is Sudoku. I'm a huge fan of Sudoku. So anytime I get more access to Sudoku, I am totally okay with that. Give me more logic puzzles, please.
Perfect.
There's calculations. How fast can you do simple sums one after another? Which is something that I remember doing a lot in Brain Age. They'll just throw a simple calculation at you, and you just do it as quick as you can. There's the rock, paper, scissors test. Just using your fingers and rock, paper, scissors. That's an interesting choice because I don't really
It
think
uses the IR camera, too.
Oh.
So you put your hand in front of the right Joy-Con, and you see like I don't know if it's like thermal imaging. It's whatever the IR senses. Like it senses positions and mass. So you can see your hand on the screen and see the shapes that you're making, and the game detects it.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. Outside of that, we have word scramble, combine letters to form words. Photographic memory, remember the photo previously displayed. Dual task, leap over hurdles while choosing the biggest number. That's interesting. And then it says, with one Joy-Con each, challenge friends and family to select kinds of training such as bird watching. You compete to count birds the fastest, and box counting. So you try to remember the number of boxes.
We're going from bird shapes to squares. Quite the increase in difficulty.
Yeah. So, is this just an extension of Brain Age?
I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, because I think it might be. You guys are more than welcome to criticize us.
Brain Age, Brain Training, those are all the same series. And then Big Brain Academy is what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, I'm glad we got that sorted out.
Yeah, what reminded me is because the sum training, the quick sum training, that's what I remember getting my Brain Age calculated with. And I'm like, oh, it's all the same thing.
Yeah. And I mean that's about it for that. Obviously there's more stories. But Daemon X Machina got another update.
A substantial
recently.
one.
Yeah, it added a bunch of fixes and a versus mode.
Yeah, that caught my eye. And it's 1v1, is that right?
That's what I heard. Most of these notes are just fixes. I can't actually find. Wow, this is a
lot of fixes.
Yeah. There's a cooperative mode. Take on giant bosses with up to 4 players. You can play with up to 4 players locally or team up and play online.
So that was in at launch. So I'm assuming then that they just added more missions.
Yes, it looks like maybe that giant bosses mode is new.
Okay.
Work together with your friends to take down giant bosses in your customized arsenal. This mode features an exclusive stage separate from the story mode where you can also play alone or with human or CPU players to complete your 4-player party.
Well, neat. I'm glad to see that game getting a little bit more love because it looks like it was kind of a drop in the bucket, but which is no fault to the developers. Developers look like they are like really humble and really taking the criticism to heart and actively trying to address things that people didn't like. Like even since that original demo, when they fielded that kind of response from people, and I was one of the people who filled out the survey because I had a lot of constructive criticism. And I'm excited to see that they've been addressing a lot of that. Maybe not in the greatest of ways, but they're trying.
Yeah, I like the recent pattern trend of developers really, putting things out there even before they're finished, and really kind of involving the community and those who want to actually play the game in the process, while still like remaining true to their actual project.
Right.
But certainly taking that input is also just like super important. So good on the devs. It's still a game that I'm not completely sold on, though. If I at the very least where I'm at right now, if it goes on sale for
I was
a good
thinking the same
amount,
thing.
I would love to pick it up if I have the means. Though there are plenty of other games that I am looking forward to.
It kind of had the unfortunate timing of coming out right around the same time as Astral Chain, which had a lot more buzz behind it.
Yeah, Astral Chain is very much a game that I still want to drop money on, and I would drop up to $60 on it. So
yeah.
Outside of that, we have some Pokemon anime news. The Anime series, the new one, has new characters and screens that they threw at us. It looks like a new female character. The first character is Professor Sakuragi. His workplace is none other than the Sakuragi Research Institute in Vermilion City in Kanto.
So the new professor isn't even from the Galar region, or at least in the case of the anime. So
yes,
they are really, making a big departure from what the anime used to be, which would always follow what the video game is doing. Oh, we're going to the Unova region, so we're going to do an anime all about the Unova region and just follow the plot of that game. For this, it really just seems like they want to separate those two things, and I am really all for that.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Like, to think that they're just going to take the whole of the Pokemon world and tell a narrative without the limitations of like the game's narratives.
Yeah. So having a professor based in the Kanto region, I think, is really cool, because I know people are going to say, like, oh, they're pandering to the Gen 1ers and to the Kanto region fans and all that. But the focus of this anime is just to treasure the Pokemon series as a whole. We'll be visiting all of the regions, seeing all of the Pokemon, probably seeing some familiar faces and fan favorite characters. Maybe Brock and Misty will make another appearance. Yeah, so I'm excited for that. And having another female professor is neat.
Yeah. The only other thing I would say about this is that maybe this is another way of exploring the world that might influence the games going forward. Who knows how many more regions they'll just make. Here's Gen, 9 and 10 and 11 or whatever. And maybe at some point they'll just get really bold and stop making so many Pokemon. Maybe they, in a sense, reach their limit and then just, add in a handful. And that's kind of been the case with the last few generations.
X and Y in particular had a very low Pokemon or new Pokemon count.
Right. So they were like, okay, we're not going to just add another 150 because that's a lot of work. And then, also let's make regional variants. And so, I guess this is just in line with where the series has been going in the first place, is the idea that, like, hey, let's start kind of connecting all of these different regions in different ways. Maybe at some point the games will in some way go back to the Kanto region, and maybe there are some Kanto variants of other Pokemon.
Oh, that would be cool.
So that would be a really cool way of maybe remedying some of the kind of more entitled complaints of the vocal minority of the community.
Yeah.
And maybe eventually we'll get that national deck back, but
and they did confirm that. I will say that. Just to interject, the Pokemon team did say the national decks will return in future titles. So people who are upset about that, this is not a permanent thing.
Yeah, I can't imagine the amount of work that went into the this next generation of games.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's completely understandable to me that they wouldn't just finish it off. Back to talking about the anime, there is another character. The second character is Koharu, who is Professor Sakuragi's 10-year-old daughter. Her Pokemon is Yamper. She's a childhood friend of Go.
Go is the new rival, I think.
Okay.
Or one of the new, or maybe Go is the new partner. There's so many new characters right now.
Yeah.
I can't keep them straight in my head.
So I'm guessing, is this a new Pokemon? Like a little
Yes,
little
Yamper
dog?
is new for the Galar region. He was
Okay.
actually introduced silently at the E3 demo of Pokemon Sword and Shield. I remember Paul and I went up to the demo, and he just appeared in our party. And we were like, they haven't revealed him yet.
Yeah, this is an adorable Pokemon.
It is the Corgi Electric Dog.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like the new Pikachu.
Every generation has some kind of new Pikachu with the cute little round cheeks.
Yeah, it's even got a similar tail.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like a thunderbolt, which we have seen before
Yes.
in some places.
So does it say when the anime is launching or when it starts?
Not in this article. I would imagine it starts sometime in the future.
Probably.
Sometime after the date that we are recording this.
Yes, that is as accurate as we can get, though if I were to make an estimation, it's probably going to be around the launch of Sword and Shield.
Yeah. Oh, man. I still haven't decided if I'm going to buy that game. And mostly because I still haven't finished Y and I haven't finished Sun.
Well, think of it this way. Like, some of the new things with Sword and Shield are a lot more multiplayer, like, focused.
Yeah.
Like with the big wild areas and raid battles and stuff. And we live in the same place now, so it's just a lot more enticing to play games together.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And
So-
then you're also here to hound me about it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
You better be playing that Pokemon game.
I'm pretty sure you purchased the last two Pokemon
I
games.
did. I bought you both of them.
It's the last time Brandon buys me a game.
There's never again.
Never again. It's not happening.
And also in Pokemon news, this actually was announced today, so it's not in our notes, but there will be a new update on Pokemon Sword and Shield tomorrow. So there will be some new news, probably more Pokemon, maybe a feature or two, or maybe a lot of Pokemon. Who knows?
Actually, that reminds me of one other thing that has got me excited about an event Pokemon in Pokemon Go, which is a Pikachu who wears the Mimikyu costume.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like
Oh, is it the Halloween event?
yeah,
Oh,
it's
I
like
love it.
super meta. Like I was like, oh my god, I need one of these. So ever since I saw that, I keep checking Pokemon Go to see if they're there yet. Because I want a Pikachu wearing a costume of another Pokemon that is mimicking Pikachu.
That is super meta. Wow, that's fantastic.
And absolutely adorable.
Yeah.
But lastly, outside, actually, my favorite Pokemon, the Pokemon's name is Doom Guy. And Doom.
I appreciate the attempt.
You
couldn't even get
better than my head.
You couldn't even get through it.
I was proud of myself. I was trying to get there.
Okay.
But Doom Eternal was delayed, and I'm disgusted for two reasons. One, it was delayed. Actually, okay, three reasons. The second reason is Doom 64 was delayed with it.
Yeah.
Which at this point I'm arguably more excited for just because I want to play that game.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to play Doom 2 earlier today, and I just got uber frustrated. The level I'm on is super hard. I'm not even on the hardest difficulty. And then the third reason is that it has been pushed back to March 20th, 2020, which if anybody else is aware of...
I heard screams way out in the distance.
Yeah, it is the screams of all the Animal Crossing fans who are also big fans of Doom, which I don't know how much of an overlap that
I
is.
have to
but
spend
there is
$120 now.
Yeah. And then not to mention that, like, okay, I put at the very least like 200 hours into New Leaf, right? I anticipate me putting at least another 200 hours into Animal Crossing New Horizons.
I think this will be even bigger. Like, the potential for the amount of gameplay time, I think it'll be way higher than any of the previous games.
Oh, yeah, especially the fact that they're like, hey, you know, to increase the amount of customization, we're just going to take everything away from the start. The only thing you get is Nook and
your debt.
and your debt. So you're a slave to Nook. They will insist that it is not a horrible relationship. And the only reason that is because it's scripted, because we know that Tom Nook exploits the people of your Animal Crossing town, and he must be overthrown.
He gave you a phone. He gave you a phone that you didn't ask for, and then he charged you for it.
Then he charged you for it, and then you can only buy his stuff on it. He's like I was just say real world Apple. He's the Animal Crossing Steve Jobs / Tim Cook.
The proprietary apps, proprietary software of Animal Crossing New Horizons.
There is, and Dream Drop in the chat says, and by the people, we mean you, just the player. Yeah, so look out, because the next entry on the Switch 2 is going to be Animal Crossing New Revolution.
I knew it was. I was waiting for it. I knew the title and everything.
Yeah, and you can pick your political tendency too. Okay, so that's all the news we have for today. But we do have a few other things that we want to go through today. One that I'm pretty proud of. We have a new segment, something I'm very passionate about. Brandon, please introduce our new segment, Stop and Swap. For those watching the video version, you just saw a brand new animation that Brandon did earlier today. That is thebomb.com.
Thank you.
And hopefully tomorrow I'll get around to messing around with some audio for it.
This was kind of last minute. I literally finished this 2 hours ago.
Yeah. It looks great though.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about Paper Mario. See, this is what I was talking about. When I was well prepared, I mean, I literally wrote out a monologue of sorts talking about some more basic critiques.
And we should also kind of break down what Stop and Swap is before we get started.
Yes. Okay. So Stop and Swap is a segment where we choose a game or a topic, specifically a game or a series, to talk about what the future of the series might look like.
Yep.
What we might keep, what might get swapped out and replaced, and what might get removed in the future, and specifically what we would like to see done with those series. So we stop to think about what we want, and we try to make the case that certain things should be swapped out. Disclaimer, this is not a complete and all-encompassing critique. But there are some critiques that I would like to make, and maybe let us know what you think in the comments or in the chat.
Yeah, if you have your own swaps that you think of while we're talking about it, maybe bring them up, and we might mention them too.
Yeah, certainly this is something that when I was writing, I got really, really into it, and started to kind of understand the weight of the discussion at hand. So this might be something that I turn into a longer form standalone video down the line.
Which we could brand that as Stop and Swap too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So here we go. There's a lot to love about Paper Mario, specifically when it comes to the series' greatest game, hashtag my opinion, the Thousand-Year Door. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. Over the last few years, the series has gone through a number of drastic changes. Super Paper Mario abandoned 3D and a turn-based RPG combat system altogether in favor of a more action RPG-oriented experience. Sticker Star emphasized its love of stickers, but also robbed the series of much of its identity, opting instead to use uninspired generic models of Toads and Goombas rather than the populist creative people characters that came with the characters such as Rockhawk or Admiral Bobbery.
My favorite.
I could go on. I won't even get into how much I miss having all of those great partners throughout the first two games, in contrast to the severe deficit of partners in the games that followed Thousand Year Door. But for all the things that Nintendo did right for Thousand Year Door and the creativity that has been displayed throughout the games, it would be a mistake for me to advocate for a mere return to form for the future of the series. And I think that's what really we wanted to explore here, especially for something like Paper Mario, because me and Brandon talk quite a bit about this series and how much personalities in those first two games, what kind of was lost, to say like, okay, Super Paper Mario was quite a good game, had a lot going for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Sticker Star, not so much, but you must heed the fact that I have not played so much of Sticker Star. So,
I have. I could talk all day about that.
Well, then we'll let you talk on that as well. And you can also correct me if anything's wrong.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure you looked at my critique. So what do I want? What do we want out of a Paper Mario Switch game? What stays? What goes? What expands? That's what I'd like to explore right now. First, starting with the things I'd love to see come back. Give me back my turn-based RPG combat with partners and action commands.
I think this is going to be like a universal agreement across the board of fans.
Yeah, like I don't know why they ever abandoned it. It should have been expanded upon. There's always ways to change it up that doesn't betray the formula. Certainly, I don't just want it to be the same. Adding different types of commands and, I think you could go on forever about and even if it just came back essentially in its own form, there's still things that the games won't share. Like the next game probably isn't going to have crystal stars,
No, yeah.
So the special moves might look a lot different. Even if it was something like Color Splash, having the cards, maybe those replaced the special moves and they operated on a different level, for example.
Yeah, I mean, that won't change the core of what the special moves are, but it adds some character to it. But in the case of Color Splash, they not only did it for character, but they changed the very core of the combat system, really slowing it down by forcing you to interact with the cards with the touchscreen, fill them up with paint. The biggest issue with the combat system using the cards in that game was the fact that it took so long to take a turn. So if we do what you're saying and just take those cards and just dedicate them to special moves and then make the interactables different for each attack, very much like how action commands change between special attacks, then I think that'd be more fun. And it would incentivize me to actually use them in combat if I don't have to do it every turn.
For sure. So I know that Nintendo made the decision to change much of the Paper Mario series to differentiate it from the other Mario RPG series, Mario and Luigi. And with the recent closure of the developer for Mario and Luigi Alpha Dream, comes an opportunity to revitalize what Paper Mario felt like it lost along the way. And while Sticker Star and Color Splash still retain much of the combat system's DNA, it also doesn't come close to the fun I've had putting in to leveling up Mario and his partners in Thousand Year Door and taking down all those wonderful variety of enemies thrown all about that world.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I don't think that's necessarily gone away. The boss designs, I should
Certainly.
say. Sticker Star was a little bit lower on that than Color Splash. Color Splash did kind of do the crummy thing and kind of default to the Koopalings, which we were very tired of by that point because of the new Super Mario Brothers games. But the boss fights were still creative. So that's something I don't think that's been lost. In fact, I think in a lot of ways that's something that's been improved upon. But if we can combine the types of silliness that they've done with the boss battles in more recent games with the more core RPG elements of the previous games, we could achieve something that is overall greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that actually just came to my mind is how lovely the dialogue and the, separated chapters and stories were in Thousand Year Door. Specifically, I remember just stopping in kind of an amazement as I was playing through Twilight Town. And when you meet up with Vivian for the first time, and you have to listen in to the birds talking.
Yeah.
And so there was conversations about how, hey, did you hear about how so-and-so got his internet upgraded and how he gets like 100 megabits down, and all this other stuff. And you could tell how dated it is just by that speed.
Yeah.
And then there was another one where they were discussing the ramifications of climate change, which was absolutely fantastic.
That's certainly topical now.
Yeah, right? And then another one, which is the one where you figure out, about the character whose name is Dupless.
Yes.
Where they talk about how all the humans are really dumb and how they can't figure out that, quote unquote, Mario is actually Dupless, and they just don't realize it. So there's just a lot of character in that game. I mean, I could go on and on about how, during the, what was like the chapter 6 or 7 on the train, you meet the penguin who's a detective, and he's like so blatantly like awful at being a detective.
Yeah.
Like he calls you Luigi right out of the gate.
Yep.
And he insists that your name is Luigi. The fact that he thought Luigi is more famous than Mario is hysterical in and of itself. But he constantly gets things wrong. And then, he calls you the junior detective, even though you're doing all the work.
It reminds me of the dynamic between Tim and Detective Pikachu. Where Detective Pikachu thinks he's a great detective when a lot of the way he approaches logic isn't exactly sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about that chapter the most, and that's actually something that returns from the first game. The Shiver City chapter of the original Paper Mario also features a quote-unquote murder mystery case that is helped solved by a detective penguin.
Yeah. So something else about the Thousand Year Door. Now, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong about this, on how much they do this in some of the later games, but specifically the kind of more Metroidvania aspects of the Thousand Year Door. For example, when Mario transforms in different ways, for example, he turns sideways so he can fit through thin corridors and find secrets, and sometimes you'll have to actually backtrack to previous areas to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Even like you have to utilize some of that to finish some of the you might call them side quests, the trouble boards.
The troubles, yes.
Yeah. So having to go back, and
there's one in Hooktail's castle that you can't do. I think that you have to go. It might be the Miss Mouse quest, but yeah, you can't do it until significantly later in the game when you have some other stuff. And I always thought that was super cool.
And then like other things like, okay, well, now you combine that and now you roll up into a tube. And it just really emphasizes the fact that you are paper, right? Not just in the visuals, but in the actual function of the game.
Yeah, that's something that's definitely been lost, I think. Color Splash still, like from a visual standpoint, plays with paper better than any game in the series.
Right.
But in terms of mechanics and actions in the game, they don't really play with that at all. You don't go into a tube anymore. You don't turn sideways so you're flat. None of that stuff is there, but there is backtracking, and I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. This will be one of my swaps.
Okay.
So Paper Mario Color Splash has backtracking. I don't know if you know this, but it's kind of chapter based, but it's divided on an overworld map. So think of like Super Mario World, where you leave an area, and now you're on the overworld map, and there's these little spaces that are different places in the game, and then you jump into them. They're kind of like the more traditional hubs of the classic Paper Mario games, but they are just the way you travel between them has changed. That said, there are a lot of those areas that you will get access to that you just can't do anything in. You'll go in them, and there's nothing you can do, and you don't know what you're supposed to do. But you come back later with either a thing that you found, which are the real-world objects you can discover that do their real-world things. They might open a passageway for you. One of my favorites so far in the game, I never finished it, by the way. I don't have my Wii U anymore, so I can't. But there was a plunger, and you had to plunge some toads out of a pipe. It was really funny. My problem with it, though, and I found this happen to me a lot, especially in the beginning of the game, is I would go to these areas that I got access to and just be completely dumbfounded, have no idea where I'm supposed to go next. The game is linear, but it doesn't really nudge you enough to tell you where you should be going. So in that way, the Metroidvania aspects of Paper Mario Color Splash really frustrated me. It's not like Thousand Year Door where you naturally come across these things and you remember them and you're like, oh, I should go back there and do that thing. And most of the time, it's not even required. If you do it, it's just going to give you like a shine sprite so you can level up your characters, or you'll find something really good for you. But with Color Splash, it just halts your progress in a way that's not fun. Not like Metroid Prime or God of War, which like masterfully handles that entire like style of gameplay. But Color Splash, no. I would swap that from the game.
Yeah. Okay. So, something else, talking about some of those more Metroidvania style options, and specifically some of that backtracking, and in particular some of the back and forth. Something has to be done about that. That's something that can be improved. Some of the monotonous back and forth, like the train ride.
And we're talking about Thousand Year Door,
yes. The train ride where there is, I think, like only like 4 or 5 sections of this train car.
Yeah.
That you're going back and forth for like at least an hour,
And sometimes like you have to go from front to back, and it just takes too long.
Yeah, like I was constantly switching back to my Yoshi, which in this playthrough I named Logan. Because I'm such an original and totally not self-consumed individual, where I just hop on his back just to try to get back and forth, and it still felt too long. It still felt like there was too much. And maybe they can alleviate some of that with, obviously we have a more powerful console, so maybe there doesn't have to be as much loading zones.
Oh, for sure.
So maybe like that's part of the solution.
Or, and this could be in addition to that, you just make things happen on the way there. It's like if you have to go back and forth between really large distances over and over again, if there's no events taking place, nothing that progresses the plot forward, it just feels like busy work. So say something happens in each train car on the way to, your supposed destination for the next segment of plot. If they had handled it a little bit more like that, have the train cars change in between these instances, and maybe some extras that you can find if you are if you're a little more exploratory.
Yeah.
But there's no reason to just have to walk back and forth. The game should have just loaded you in to where you needed to be if that was the case.
Yeah, and I think one place that this kind of thing is especially egregious is in the Twilight Town episode.
Oh my god.
Where you have to go back and forth between Twilight Town and the creepy steeple. Like if I forget something to do something, that just adds another two-way trip, onto it.
Yeah, and there's that area outside of Twilight Town, like towards the east before you go into the background to go to the creepy steeple, where there's just like actually really powerful enemies that they'll hurt you if you fight too many of them. And sure, you can fight a lot of them and you can get star points and level up a few times, but it's not going to make them any easier to deal with.
Yeah, and there's not really a lot to do in those sections either. It's just kind of like more busy work, right? So one of the, proposed solutions I have is, one, just give us more options in terms of like, okay, I can understand going through it once or twice, in the set, or at the very least just once, right?
Ideally, just once.
Yeah, just once. And then finding, having like an alternative way back, like a pipe or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe something else. They do that in other parts of the game. I know once you like get the super hammer and the ultra hammer, you can open up places in the bottom that get you
the blue pipes.
Yeah, that get you to those places quicker, and I appreciate that, right? So they weren't like completely deaf when it came to like, oh, maybe we shouldn't make them go through all these places
and
over again.
The underground is also like a really good example of them doing backtracking well.
Yes.
Because you go down there all the time, but they block off paths from you that you can only access once you obtain certain abilities.
Yeah.
And they're always just like alternate paths that you could be taking while you're going somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. And then when you get new things, for example, when you get Admiral Bobbery, like there's a pillar that you can blow up that kind of gives you access to both sides from already being down there instead of having to go
it saves you time.
Yeah. So opening up places like that certainly helps. I wish they did it a little bit more in certain areas of the game. But at the same time, like, I think this also gives them the opportunity to put more worth into those places. So say like in Twilight Town and the places between the creepy steeple and Twilight Town, like, what if there was more to do, more secrets, more incentive to go back there, to get things, to do things like that?
Yeah, because the only interesting parts in between Twilight Town and the creepy steeple are Twilight Town and the creepy steeple. Like, it's all just barren with just a bunch of enemies. And, that's not how most of the rest of the game is structured, and that's why it's specifically really frustrating in Twilight Town. That said, there is one that tops it for me, and I think you just did it recently.
I am currently still doing it.
Okay. All right. I'm getting my rant pants on. So, Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door has one of the most useless, awful, egregious fetch quests in any game I've ever played, and it's all for a gag. The gag is not funny by the time you're done. So you need to find a way to get to the moon. And in order to do that, you have to find this guy in one of the snowy towns. I forget the name of the place. It's been a long time. So you go to the town. He's not there. And someone's like, oh, I think I saw him over in, what is it, Petalburg? What is the name of the first town you go to where Hooktail's castle is?
I think it's Petalburg.
So you have to go there. And so you do. You travel all the way to Petalburg, and you start talking around to people, and you find a guy, and he's like, oh, I just saw him. I think he said he was on his way to such and such. So now I go to such and such place, start talking around to people, find someone, and they're like, oh, you just missed him. He said he was headed over this way. And now you have to get up, go to that other place, and guess what? Spoiler alert, he's not there either. And this happens over and over again. I think you have to visit every single town in the game.
Oh, that's no good.
It's obnoxious. And guess where he is by the time it's over?
Back where
he was supposed to be.
Oh, man.
and there was no reason for it. It served no gameplay purpose. Like, I understand there's a lot of colorful writing in it, but it takes forever. It's obnoxious. The last time I had to do it was when my wife was playing through the game for the first time, and it really, like, took the wind out of her sails. I'd forgotten how awful that whole segment is.
Yeah, when you get a part in a game like that, like, it makes you, like, almost, you just want to stop.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes too difficult or it's not fun, and it really kind of breaks the immersion as well. It's just like, nope, this is obnoxious.
And I can't find, like, a good reason for them to have had that in there. And that's what makes it more frustrating than just, you know, the fact that it's in there at all. It could be cut and nothing from the game would be lost. He could have just been there when you first arrived and it would have been fine. It would get you to the part you're excited about because you're entering the end game and you're like, oh, I'm excited to see what's going to happen at the end of the story before the game just says, nope, we're going to make you wait like 30 minutes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's certainly something that they should not repeat, right? So
we're going to swap that.
Yeah, swap it out. Talking about things that are just kind of screw with the pacing and just don't feel quite right.
Especially in an RPG.
Yeah. I have a smaller critique.
Okay.
Of the episode with the chapter with the train going to Poshley Heights. And that's because most of the chapter takes place on that train. Mm-hmm. The training of itself is fine. The boss at the end is fine.
The mystery is kind of fun too.
Yeah, but it doesn't kind of have the same punch that a lot of the other chapters have.
There's no climax.
Yeah, and then once you get to Poshley Heights, like, it's only a few more minutes until you get the star, and then you get it.
Yeah,
like,
Poshley Heights is the least fun place to go in the game. There's nothing to do there.
Yeah, especially when you go into that background picture, right? And maybe you're anticipating a little bit more.
They could have played with that.
Yeah, I mean, and they wouldn't have necessarily had to do that much more.
Yeah.
Right? Even if they took that boss from the train and kind of brought it into a different form and had you finally, really that final push to finish off that chapter. But it climaxes and then it takes a little bit too long for it to really finish.
I would have even been fine if it had just been like a battle with Bowser. Like, it didn't have to be anything new because we got the new boss fight earlier in the chapter. So just like something extra that really blocked you off from the Crystal Star would have been great. Just doing it during the train ride didn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
And that said, like, I don't have many complaints about the train segment itself because I like the mystery. The dialogue's really fun. The backtracking is annoying, like we talked about. But yeah, why even have Poshley Heights? I know it's about the journey and not the destination, but there needs to be at least something at the destination, right?
Yeah. Other than the L emblem.
Yes, which is a really good find, by the way.
It's a great find, especially after that whole interaction.
Yeah.
With the penguin detective. I can't even remember his name.
I can't remember either.
So
there is a little bonus thing that you can get, you can't get it, but it's there in Poshley Heights. I think somewhere towards the end of the game. I'm not sure if she's there. It's a character who shows up.
Okay.
It's a character from the original Paper Mario who makes a cameo appearance. And that's literally all it is. She will talk to you and be like, oh, Mario, it's you. It's been a while. And that's it. She doesn't join your party. She just says hi. That's
cute. And I think that brings us to my final critique for this segment.
The final stop on the swap train.
Yeah, right. And this one's a little smaller because this isn't something you have to do to finish the game. And that is returning to Glitzville and reclaiming your title.
Yeah, this is just bonus content.
Yeah. So after you finish Glitzville, you can head back. They lose your records and insist that you have to start at the bottom in the minor leagues, which I was like, oh, this is going to be great, right? Thinking that, and even at a certain point, Rockhawk says like, oh, I've been training and you're not going to get me this time. and then I breezed through all 20 ranks.
Yeah.
And I got to Rock Hawk, and he was even easier because at that point I had leveled up so much as well. And they didn't really even balance for that, right? It was just kind of something that like they let you do, but it didn't really offer more. I was anticipating at least something like, just bump up the difficulty of these fights a little bit, you know?
It's so weird too, because like I'm assuming they designed it as if you were going to compete in the Glitzville tournament again, like right after you finish that chapter. But no, any regular player is going to be excited about what's to come, and they're just going to head towards that. They're not going to stay in Glitzville and do the whole thing over again. So why wouldn't you balance it for future gameplay? Because no one's going to do it right then.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't.
So, and that one, again, that's pretty small considering you don't actually have to finish it.
That said, and I don't think you've gotten to this yet, but there is an additional hidden challenge in the game called the Pit of 100 Trials, which is similar to the Glitzville Gauntlet, but you don't get to heal between fights. You are fighting 100 battles in a row, back to back, and the only way you're going to heal is if you heal yourself. And that is enormously challenging the first time, especially if you're not prepared for it. So I think that's a good kind of makeup for that. But that said, that's still no reason that the Glitzville battles should be so easy a second time through.
Yeah, I mean, all they would literally have to do is just bump up the health and bump up the damage for all these things, and then they didn't have to change anything else. They certainly didn't.
You could have even given Rockhawk like 2 or 3 new attacks and maybe another transformation. Nothing too crazy. If they had only done it for Rockhawk, it would have been worth it to go through it again.
Oh yeah, at the very least Rockhawk, especially when he's talking crap.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning, he's like so.
Yeah, that could definitely be handled better.
So that comes to the end of our segment for our first news segment in a while. Stop and Swap.
Let us know what you guys think if you want us to keep doing this. It won't be a weekly segment, but it'll certainly be something that we do frequently.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is that, long term, we'll just keep coming up with segments, and as needed, we will use them if we feel inspired. Certainly I was earlier today. I had a hard time sitting and be like, okay, well, I need to sit down and do some work because we talked about doing this.
Yeah.
And then when I finally got going, at first I was just going to do bullet points, but then I just started typing it out. I was like, okay, I'm getting into this. And I'm sure that as time goes on and as I finish 1,000 Year Door and probably I would like to go back and play the original Paper Mario.
Great game.
Yeah, and then maybe make my way through maybe Sticker Star. And if they put Color Splash on the Switch eventually.
I do hope they do with some of the changes I had hoped for, like a change to the way you interact with the battle system. I mean, you don't have the Wii U gamepad anymore, so they kind of have to. But I would really appreciate that, because that's a game that I want to appreciate, and there's just some small things they'd have to do to make it worth it for me.
Yeah. And then I think the final thing I had to say left me, so that's it. Thank you for putting up with that.
Yes.
I had fun writing all of that, and I hope that it gets even better in the future.
So for those of you wondering, Stop and Swap, the name was definitely inspired by Stop and Swap from Banjo-Kazooie, which is why the intro very heavily mimics Banjo-Kazooie in nature. So maybe in the future we'll do a Stop and Swap on Banjo-Kazooie. That'd be kind of meta.
I'll have to play that game.
For me, it'd probably be a lot more focused on Banjo-Tooie, a game I have a lot of criticisms of.
Yeah, if there is ever a Banjo 3E.
Yeah, I mean, unless you count Nuts and Bolts, which in its own right is a good game, just maybe not a Banjo game.
Yeah.
But that said, we do have one more new segment for you guys.
We don't have a transition for this one.
We don't, and we do have a name though.
Yes.
And if you're from Nintendo Voice Chat, if you guys are at IGN, if you're somehow listening to this, yes, we did steal half the title from you, but don't worry, we have our own little spin on it. I'm going to let Logan introduce it.
It is time for, drum roll please, the question slot.
Ta-da!
Kind of a play on just putting a coin in a slot, playing those arcade games. So we asked on Twitter at Break Room Arcade earlier if you guys had any questions for us. And I was not sure what kind of response we were going to get, but we got more than enough.
Way more questions than I was expecting.
Yes, for sure. And I think, honestly, I think we have time to go through all of these.
Yeah.
So let's just start with at the Cosmic Bones.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show.
Cosmic_Bones, by the way.
Well, the at is at the Cosmic Bones.
Oh, right.
Currently, his actual name is Cosmic_Boons.
Spooky.
Yeah.
So what has he got?
He asked, what's a Nintendo franchise you just can't get into? And I would add, and why?
All right. I'm ready to be attacked by the internet, but Pikmin. I've never, super enjoyed Pikmin. I've never completed a Pikmin game, and I've played all 3 of them. And, well, not hate Pikmin, but I've played Pikmins 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
I find them fun, but, I'm a kind of gamer who likes something that's more instant, more twitchy, like a shooter or a fighting game or a platform or something that I have more direct control over what happens. As to where in Pikmin, it's kind of like an RTS light. I'm not really good at micromanaging so many things at once, especially in the case of Pikmin 3, where you have 3 different captains that you have to split the duties between. It was a lot for me, and it kind of overwhelmed me, so I didn't finish that game. So yeah, I'd have to say Pikmin for me.
Yeah, okay. Before I say what mine is, one, I hate you.
I'm sorry
for hating on Pikmin.
I don't dislike it.
That being said, I've only finished the first Pikmin game. I remember playing it as a kid, and when I got older, I replayed it and actually finished it, and I crushed it.
Nice.
Absolutely. I got literally every piece, and I had 10 days to spare.
Wow.
So I'm pretty great at it, and I hope Pikmin 4 is on its way, and I hope it's good.
I'll buy it. I'm gonna give it another shot.
Yeah. A franchise that I cannot get into. That's a good question. Probably. I don't.
Pokemon?
Oh, I'm tempted to say Kirby, honestly.
Oh, you know what? I might have to throw that in addition to mine.
Yeah. I've always liked certain parts of Kirby, but I've always found the gameplay to be a little slow, and not particularly engaging.
No, and it's a little sad too, because a lot of the combat mechanics and controls borrow from Super Smash Brothers. Really, Smash is borrowing from Kirby, but for our purposes, we'll say it's the reverse. And we like Smash Brothers, so why don't we like Kirby? Well, the level designs are kind of simple. Yeah,
which is understandable. I think Kirby is certainly meant to be accessible.
Absolutely. It's always been targeted towards children and people who aren't great at platformers. That's why Sakurai made Kirby's Dream Land in the first place. That was the entire reason behind it. And Sakurai's always been an advocate for making games accessible to everyone.
Yeah. So I hope my answer really stings when Cosmic hears that, because we know that Cosmic is quite the big fan of Kirby.
I want to clarify though, for me, it's the Kirby platformers.
Yes.
I love most, if not all, of the spin-off games. Kirby Air Ride, the was it Topsy Turvy on SNES? The one where you golf. I forget the name of it.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
The Kirby Pinball. I love that game too.
Yeah, and I also think Kirby, is it Kirby's Adventure on
NES? Yeah.
Yeah, on NES, or was it Dreamland 3? It was one of those games where the thing I do appreciate about Kirby is having like, it's almost like feels like a collection of games.
Superstar.
Superstar, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Whereas like some of those extra modes are fun, even though they might be a little bit more shallow. But Kirby does have a lot going for it, and I would love a sequel to Air Ride as well.
Yes, I love that game.
So, but generally speaking, those platformers, I'm not a huge fan of. I'd rather play other platformers. Moving on from that, we have our friend at Santi _ the person asks, Apocalypse, you quickly pack up your essentials and on your way out of the house as you run for shelter. You decide to take some entertainment with you because the end of the world is boring. You have enough space for a console and at max 3 games. Which do you bring with you into Oblivion?
So I've been thinking about this. If it were one game, my answer would be different. But we're talking 3 games and a console. So I'm going to say my Switch, because it's portable. So it's going to be really easy to play that in Oblivion for 2.5 hours. Hopefully there's an outlet in there somewhere. All kidding aside, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, because that is a game that I could play for a very long time and still have things to do.
Yes.
Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, 2 Ultimates, because I love Smash. It's not really a game I can live without. And if I'm not the only one in Oblivion, there's more incentive for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then for my third game, this is hard. This is a tough one. I don't know. It might have to be, like, my gut instinct says Breath of the Wild, but at this point, like, I've done everything there is to do in Breath of the Wild except collect Korok seeds. So I don't know. Like, I'm gonna have to think about that. I'll let you start your answer.
If I have to bring a console, does PC count?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
You might not have internet, but who knows?
Okay. I'm gonna bring my PC, and I'm gonna stretch it a little bit and say that I'm also gonna bring my Vive. Because I'm definitely...
The Vive is a platform.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
So that's saying, okay, I'll limit it to VR games, right? Because I need my Beat Saber. I need to be able to play Beat Saber in a post-apocalyptic world. One, it gives me a way to get some exercise, you know. I know
there's a lot of free space in Oblivion, too. You could have a really good play space.
Yeah. And then with that... I can't. It's hard to say what other games I would take with that.
I know it's a tough question, isn't it?
Especially if I'm just limiting myself to VR. Let's go ahead and say that I am going to bring. There's a game currently in development called Garden of the Sea, which is extremely relaxing. I think that would be good to have to kind of escape, you know, the post-apocalyptic world a little bit, you know, see some cute little creatures and feel like my life isn't going to heck.
I just figured out what my third game is, thanks to you.
And then VR.
What about Binding of Isaac? You play a whole lot of that.
I do play a whole lot of Binding of Isaac. But I've already limited myself to VR.
Oh, specifically just VR games.
Yeah. So I figured if I can bring up your VR, that I should limit myself to VR. I think and that's mostly for Beat Saber, right? And who knows what other games will launch on the Vive and other VR platforms before the end of the world.
If it were a little more polished, I would say Rec Room would be a good choice.
Oh yeah, Rec Room would be a great choice, especially if there's other VR players out there.
Yeah.
But I think I'm gonna go ahead and say Sprint Vector because that's one of the other like really solid.
That's a real fun game. Yeah. Okay, that's a pretty good set of games. I did figure out my third one thanks to you. You said relaxing, and boom, in my head, Animal Crossing: New Horizons.
Oh, fantastic.
Because like, if think of it this way, like if you're in Oblivion and say there is nobody else, say there's nobody else to play with, Animal Crossing's the perfect game because I can simulate those relationships with my villagers.
Yeah, you can slowly descend into insanity
And
still have friends.
yeah, I would believe that I actually lived in my town.
Amazing.
Yeah, so Animal Crossing, I think, is the perfect answer to that question.
Yeah, make sure to bring your Labo headset so you can play it in first person.
Oh, absolutely. That better be a feature.
What's
up next?
Santi asked another question. You've set up the shelter, food is running low, so you leave to scavenge. On your trip, you're surrounded by an army of monsters, increasing at exponential rates. By the second you black out, when you come to, you're given the powers of any game hero of your choice. Who and why?
The powers of any game hero of my choice? Okay. When I first read this question, I thought it said you wake up with that person. But if we're talking powers, this is actually really pertinent to me right now. I might say the Luminary from Dragon Quest XI.
Okay.
Because he says monsters, correct?
Yes.
That's all you fight in Dragon Quest. The Luminary is very experienced in fighting monsters. His powers are, they're for that purpose, for fighting monsters. He's the power of light used to kind of squelch the darkness. So, yeah, Power Luminary. That's an easy one.
I'm going to cheat a little bit and say Spider-Man.
Ooh.
Because I've always wanted webs, and also I think in that case the Spidey senses would come in handy as well. That and Spider-Man's my favorite hero, and he has some fantastic video games as well.
Yes. So I'll let that slide.
Okay. So the Sandman asks, what are 3 games that shaped your childhood? 2, what are your favorite video game OSTs? And 3, what fictional character do you think you'd get along with very well? So first one.
That's where I mix those questions up. So the first one, 3 games that shaped my childhood. Super Mario World was the first game that took me on an adventure. That was the first game where I was given a mission, and I had to complete it. My job was to save the princess, and that's what I did. I saved the princess probably when I was like 5 or 6 years old. It was a really big achievement to me because I really felt like I did something. And that, I think, in part is why video games are so important to me, because they allow me to do things I can't do in the real world. They allow me to be a hero. And I like being a hero. Maybe that's why I like Dragon Quest so much, is I really feel like I'm making a difference, but in a virtual setting.
For sure.
Another game, and this goes right along with that, is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time is the first adventure I went on that made me emotional. Because the setup for that game, you start as a kid, you learn of Ganondorf from Princess Zelda, and that, she thinks there's something wrong with him. And you end up sealed behind the door of time with the Master Sword for 7 years to find out that Ganondorf had done all these terrible things to all these people you had met. It makes you really feel connected to what's happening, because you knew these characters and now they're going through stuff because this guy is making their lives miserable. So now I have a personal vendetta against Ganondorf. So, I get stronger, I have to go fight him, kick his butt, everybody's happy. Yeah, so that was the first time I really had an emotional investment, I think, in a video game. And then the last one is probably a pretty obvious answer for you guys, but it's Super Smash Bros. 64. That game I thought was so much fun. It made me feel like a DBZ fighter, because the attacks are really powerful, people go flying, but I get to play as my favorite Nintendo characters. But most importantly, and I have a whole video on this that you can find on the channel, what Super Smash Bros. Means for me, but it introduced me to so many characters, so many worlds that I didn't know about before. It introduced me to, funnily enough, I had played Link to the Past by this point, but it introduced me to Link and who Link was, because I didn't know Link had a name. And that was when I discovered that Link was a person and not just some guy I get to name. Ever since then, I've only ever named my character Link because I feel he is a person and not me, even though that is not Miyamoto's intention.
Right.
But it introduced me to Metroid, and it convinced me to play Metroid Prime, and I loved that game. So, like, if it weren't for Super Smash Brothers, I wouldn't have tried Metroid. I wouldn't have tried F-Zero. I hadn't even played Donkey Kong before, and it got me into Donkey Kong. And Fire Emblem, a series I love now. I wouldn't have happened if it weren't for Smash Brothers.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's my answer to that first question.
Okay, so I have so many different games flowing through my head.
I know, I can kind of see the wheels turning.
So I guess to start, I'll say Mario Kart Double Dash.
Really?
I played so much of that game as a child, and specifically with my friend Corey. I remember staying up all night and just running through 50cc, 100cc, 150cc, and just getting all gold medals and just feeling like a champ. Just a fantastic game. I will say I remember and absolutely loved playing Turtles in Time back in the day.
A game we got to play together recently.
Yes,
Yeah.
on an arcade cabinet. It was fantastic. I would love to get a SNES and find a copy of that game one day because
Absolutely.
it's a fantastic experience. I love it. I love Ninja Turtles. I'll add this, the generic form of Lucky Charms from Aldi, not a game.
Did it have a game in it?
No, but the marshmallows were different colors, and they included the 4 colors of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So this is another reason why it was so big part of my childhood, is because I would always imagine that the last color of marshmallow I ate would turn me into that Ninja Turtle.
Wow.
Can you guess what color I always kept for last?
Purple.
Because
I wish we had a camera right now.
And then I will say for my third game, this one's hard. Oh man, which one?
Animal Crossing.
You know what? Yeah. Animal Crossing. I remember playing that on the GameCube. I still have a copy of it for the GameCube. I'm tempted to go back to it, even though we have a very new Animal Crossing coming very soon. I remember learning some of the cheat codes by heart.
Oh, wow.
And getting really efficient at just plugging those in and making a ton of money off of just, okay, fast forwarding to the next day, using cheat codes, fast forwarding the next day, using cheat codes. That's how I paid off all my house and did everything else in that game. And obviously that love of Animal Crossing has followed me into my faux adulthood. And I say faux adulthood because I don't feel like an adult.
No one does.
So second question here was the favorite video game OSTs, and I'll just limit this to one. Do you have a favorite or at least one favorite OST?
I don't think I have any specific, like, only one favorite OST. You know,
So hit me with a favorite.
A
Something
favorite
that just really stuck with you.
I wasn't anticipating I was going to say this, but Ace Attorney.
Really?
Ace Attorney has great music because, you know, it's a visual novel, of course, and you're in the courtroom. But specifically I think it's called Cornered. It's the song that plays when you've figured something out and you've cornered the witness. And you've blocked them into a corner and they can't escape. You booked them finally. And the song that plays is like so hype-inducing that it makes you feel great. So, yeah, I think Ace Attorney. I don't know. Ace Attorney. It just came out.
Yeah. Okay. So this answer might actually also change one of my other answers. And that is one of my favorite OSTs is Tetris. Which really,
it's really good. Yeah.
It's really not like, and maybe I could say like all the Tetris games, but really just like the classic Tetris theme.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons for that.
There's some science behind the Tetris theme, isn't there?
I don't know.
Like, it's designed in such a way just to keep you going. It's like the way that Koji Kondo composed the soundtrack to Super Mario Brothers. Like, he composed it in a way that the sounds of the game, the song, would kind of mimic player actions, and you could only go so far, especially on a NES chipset.
Right.
But he made it work, and the song's not very long; it just loops. And Tetris is the same way. It's a short song and it loops, but it's engaging.
Yeah. And then I'm going to go back and with the post-apocalyptic world 3 games, I'm going to change Garden of the Sea to Tetris Effect.
Good choice.
I forgot, like, man, I got to take Tetris into the apocalypse.
John Cartwright would be proud.
Which also means I still have to play that game, and it's available for the Vive, so I'm going to have to pick that up.
Oh, yeah, it came out, didn't it?
It came out in July.
Oh, I'd love to play that.
Because originally it was released just on the PlayStation 4.
Right.
And then
that was
they
an
released
E3 announcement last year, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Or no, it was last year. I was thinking of 4 months ago.
Yes.
2018.
So yes, Tetris. Also, I just have a more of an appreciation for the time period that game was made in.
Mm-hmm.
Have a little more background and just like all the things that kind of
not to plug another channel, but I love Gaming Historian, so I kind of want to plug this video. If you're interested in the history behind Tetris, it is fascinating. He has an incredible video detailing like how Tetris came to be and like how it was distributed. It's really, really fascinating. Listen, make sure to go ahead and give him a sub and watch that.
Yeah, it's like an hour-long like documentary.
It's really good.
It's fantastic. It was actually the video that finally got me to become a patron of his and pay $3 a month so I could get that video early.
Yeah.
When he was like, well, here's the final draft before, finish up the last few things. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to need to do that. So the one last question from Sandman, what fictional character do you think you'd get along with very well?
So I had an answer for this, and I'd mix it up with Santi's question. Pit from Kid Icarus, especially as he's characterized in Uprising. He is just such a nice, innocent guy who doesn't really understand much about the world, but he's inquisitive, he's curious, kind of like a child, and that air of positivity really makes me like his character a lot when I play the game. It's a game that makes me really happy because of that. I really like Pit. If Pit were a real person, Pit and I would be really good friends.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and say any of the characters from Animal Crossing.
I was wondering if you're going to say that.
Yeah.
Do you have any in mind? Any that stick out to you?
There's probably a few. I can't remember their names, but I remember one of the penguins being just super chill. Just relax, like everything's cool, man. And I really get along with that, and I just get along with relaxed people. Like, don't take life too seriously. I'm gonna talk about some really cool stuff, and if you're down to listen, like I'll get along with you. Don't be so sensitive. Don't be like, oh no, we can't talk about that. Like, no, like you just gotta be chill, And those are the kind of people I get along with.
The relaxed wave.
Yeah. So we got 2 more questions. One, from Dark's Flame. What are y'all's thought on Team Fortress 2, and have you played it? I recently started playing it myself again, and I had a good time. I was really into it back in the day, but I think changes to the matchmaking and the lack of updates hurt that game. I have not played this game in a quick minute.
I haven't played probably in 7 years. I think the last time I played it, I was a freshman in college.
Yeah. I think in a lot of ways it was, a precursor to like Overwatch.
Yeah.
And a lot of team shooters. I still have an appreciation for it. It doesn't come to mind to like go back and play it, but maybe I should, because it's been a minute. Yeah, I feel like there's room for a Team Fortress 3,
I think
somewhere
it's
down the
probably
line.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, that game's been around for so long. I think it's just time for a new iteration.
Yeah.
And it's hard to comment on that, too, since it's been so long since we played. And also, quickly, I want to mention, and I know you mentioned this in the chat. I saw you, Dark's Flame. He realized he asked this question on a Nintendo podcast. We would prefer if they were mostly Nintendo questions, but we aren't object to maybe going outside of that realm every once in a while.
So here is one that kind of involves just the whole gaming industry, but specifically on Nintendo's thing. The Gaming Council podcast at the Gaming Council, and the L is a 1. Asks, what are your thoughts on Nintendo's approach to online services? With Sony, Microsoft, and Stadia on the horizon, it seems like the next generation will have a huge focus on online cloud components. Can Nintendo continue on neglecting or dancing around to their own beat on this?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. This is something that you and I have really talked about a lot, even since before the Wii U came out, because as you all know, Nintendo has been way behind the curve on online for a long, long time. Basically forever. That said, Nintendo Switch Online does some things right, does a lot of things wrong. But it's hard for me to say. I don't think Nintendo can keep getting away with this. And, I love Nintendo, but, you got to subject them to scrutiny when they're doing things that don't make sense. Like, it's 2019. We've been saying what year it is since like 2008 about online services, and Nintendo continues to not really hit the bar on that. From like the types of services that the competitors give, like PlayStation Plus and Xbox Live, you get free games. We kind of get that with Nintendo Switch, but they are retro game collections, which is really cool in its own right. I don't want to knock that. But you have to consider the value you're getting. I know a lot of people really don't care for the NES games, myself kind of included. It's nice to have them there. It's nice to know I can play them if I want to, but I probably wouldn't have bought them otherwise. The SNES games, on the other hand, a few of those I definitely would have purchased, so I do feel like I'm getting my money's worth in that case, especially since they didn't raise the price. We're still paying the same price that we did as when the service launched. But I still feel kind of bad about not getting some free games every once in a while. And I don't want to sound entitled. It's just, it's what the competitors are doing. So maybe it's something you should try. And we got to talk about voice chat.
Yeah, the lack of like on console voice chat is still something that's frustrating, because like if I'm playing on PS4 specifically with something like Monster Hunter World, like I just
we always use the party chat.
Yeah, always use the party chat. It's just simple. I don't have to have my phone around me. I just pop on my headset and I play, right? And I can pop out and change any settings that I need to.
It's certainly not going to be better than something like Discord, which is a fully dedicated service to voice chat. That said, PSN and Xbox, they both offer something that works well enough that we are actually willing to use the feature to talk. With Wii and the Wii Speak, like the Wii Speak didn't even work with any games other than I think Animal Crossing City Folk.
Yep.
So it had a voice chat app, which I will admit I used a lot with my friend Alvin, especially when we were studying for tests, because this was way back in high school. But, I mean, I couldn't talk with him while we were playing Smash Brothers. I still had to either get on the phone or pull out Skype, because we didn't have Discord back then. Yeah, and Nintendo's still doing that. I will say that some of the features of the app are kind of neat. Like, we've tried it with Splatoon, and when you play with a private room in Splatoon, it just kind of auto adds everybody to the voice chat in the app. But what's cool is when when you're not in a match, you can talk to everybody. But when you're in a match, and if you have the game like randomly decide who's on what team, the voice chat app will divide you onto your team's side and make it so you can only talk to them during the game. I thought that was pretty cool. But why can't we have that just, on a system level?
Right. And, it's interesting also just to point out that like there is native voice chat in games on the Switch that you can just use a headset on your Switch, like Fortnite and I think Rocket League.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, Nintendo has allowed third parties to implement their own voice chat solutions, which we should commend them for. But at the same time, that tells me that they are not even confident in their own system. Like, we shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of games have built-in voice chat, even on PC, but there's still, like, system-wide voice chat with Steam. We could always use Discord. There's no, like, global option for that on Switch.
Yeah.
And that's really frustrating as someone who likes to play games online with his friends.
Yeah, for sure. And it is desirable because, like, say for, like, Monster Hunter World, there isn't in-game voice chat. It's not quite to the quality of the system, party chat, but it does exist.
So it's a solution.
Yeah. So you can do less or do more, or, you kind of have those choices that you can make.
I remember with the Wii U didn't have party chat either. But Monster Hunter Tri Ultimate did have voice chat. And the voice chat was through the Wii U gamepad because it had a microphone on it. Like, Capcom, or specifically the Monster Hunter team, they found a way to do voice chat, and they were like, we're not just going to not give it to you.
Right.
So even though it's not great, we're still going to try.
Yeah.
And that's really what I need. As long as it's system level, it's party, I can invite people, that's really all I'm asking for. I just don't want to have to use my phone. I would rather plug a headset into the Switch or use Bluetooth, which is another thing the Switch can't do, even though it has the hardware for it.
Yeah. I
don't understand.
Well, I think it might be a while before we understand, if we understand. And ultimately, can Nintendo continue to neglect this? Absolutely. They can continue to neglect it.
You're right. They can.
We will still play Nintendo games.
You are absolutely right.
I think they could get by. Should they continue to neglect it? No. I think they should cave.
And to the people who are like listening to this right now and thinking, oh, you guys are just giving them an excuse to keep doing this, I don't believe that. I believe the folks over at Nintendo, bless their hearts, especially like in the case of Nintendo Japan, a lot of the way that Nintendo Switch and Nintendo platforms are designed are around Japanese people and, the way the culture is over there. So for communication purposes, most of the time they are anticipating you're just going to be with somebody else because, Japan is a very handheld game culture. That doesn't mean they should be ignoring the other markets. I don't even remember where I was going with this, but yeah, it's for those of you who are listening who are saying that we're giving them an excuse to keep doing that, we're not. Nintendo is trying. I guarantee you they're trying, and that there is just someone there who's making the decisions who maybe doesn't understand it well enough. Like with the Splatoon team, they started doing some really neat stuff with Splatoon, specifically in Splatoon 2, that just made it easier. Like, we can do Turf War with our friends during Splatfests, and we don't have to have a full team. We can play league battles together. These were all features that weren't there in the beginning, but they gave them to us because they understood this was something that people needed. So I do think Nintendo will catch up. They'll always be behind, but they'll catch up. They'll catch up to a standard I can live with for a while.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of our segment. We're
out of credits. No more
question slot. Yeah,
no
we're
more
gonna
credits.
Have to go put some bills in the quarter machine. And I think that also brings us to the end of this podcast.
Yeah, so I kind of want some feedback from you guys. Let us know what you think about the new segments we introduced. I know we went a little longer than usual, about an hour and a half, which is funny because, like, we didn't have a lot of news to talk about and ended up with one of the longest episodes we've done in the last year.
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly had longer episodes, but we've tried to keep them a little bit shorter.
Now, we weren't anticipating that we were going to get so many so many questions on that tweet. So in future episodes, depending on the time, we might limit the amount of questions we take. And we still want you to give them to us. We might take some questions from previous weeks and reintroduce them if we think they were good and we want to still talk about them. So if your question doesn't get answered in the future, don't feel bad. We're definitely reading them all. And we are definitely thinking about all of them. If we don't have time to answer them on the show, maybe we'll even answer you on Twitter.
Yeah, might just reply.
Yeah, so don't feel bad. We understand. We've been there. So, yeah, let us know what you guys think, either in the chat, in the comment section of the YouTube video. You can tweet at us or reply to the tweet where we tweeted we were live. Pretty much anywhere on the internet if you want to give us some feedback. Even the Discord server, there's a link to that in the description below. We love playing games with you guys, just chatting about whatever. It's a really chill place. We'd love it if you guys showed up for that. So there's also some Patreon-specific rooms in there for Patreon subs. You'll also get access to some videos early. So if you want to help us out and help keep the show running and giving us, helping us pay for that HDMI cable so that we can actually be on camera again, yeah, there's a link to that in the description as well. There's lots of ways to support the show. You can become a member on the YouTube channel. You can also support the show directly over on Anchor.fm, which distributes the podcast to any podcast source you could possibly want to listen to it. If you want to listen to it on Spotify, it's there. If you want to listen to it directly on Anchor, it's there. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, everywhere. So you should be able to find us pretty much anywhere you want to listen. So we made sure to make it easy for you. You can follow me on Twitter at Babababs. You can follow Logan at LoggyDubs. You can follow us once again as a collective at Breakroom Arcade. That's where we'll be tweeting you guys for questions every week. So make sure you're replying to that tweet. So make sure you follow us over at Breakroom Arcade so you can stay in the know for that. And with all that in mind, I think that's it. I think I've officially run out of things to say. I think I said everything that needs to be said. I'm going to open my remote over on OBS so that I can close out the show. Logan, anything you want to say before we go?
Be cool to each other and join the love revolution.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Don't break your backs, breaking the games. But for now, break time's over. We'll see you next week.